I'm Julie Fannin. I'm one of the owners of Naturalist Journeys. Thank you for joining us on our Okavango Zoom presentation tonight with Greg Smith, and we have Peg Abbott and Greg Butcher with us as well. I'm just going to go over just two quick points to keep things running smoothly tonight. Please mute yourself throughout the whole presentation, and then please, if you have comments or questions, go ahead and put them in the chat at the bottom of the Zoom presentation. And at the end of Greg's presentation, I will run through the chat questions, and Greg and Peg and Greg can help answer those. And I will hand it over to Peg Abbott now.
Okay, welcome everyone. I am so glad you could make it, and talking about Botswana is just a pleasure for me. It's one of my absolute favorite destinations, and it's one we've run for quite a number of years. And way back when, I met Ewan and Sally Masson, who do our mobile safari camping part of the trip, and they've become very dear friends, as they have with Greg Smith as well. So I think year after year, we just look forward to this trip, and we'll be so pleased to have you come if you can make it. And if not, vicariously, I'd love to introduce you to the Okavango Delta, which is one of the significant landscapes on Earth. When you see the drainage coming out of Angola and fanning out like a big alluvial fan with tendrils reaching everywhere, on a map, it's exciting. And I know Greg's going to share a map with you. But when you see it on the ground, it's a living landscape of intrigue. It is so interesting. Year after year, the water changes course, and you never know what you're going to find. And this year is one of the wettest years they've had since 1958. So places that haven't seen the life-giving water are blooming now. And I think you're going to have a very exciting trip this year because of the flooding. It's been a little extreme in some areas, so the towns and areas around the edges of Okavango have to learn to shift with the water flow as well. But I would say people always ask me, Peg, what's your favorite trip? And that's sort of like asking someone with children, who's your favorite child? I've helped create a lot of these, and it's hard to pick one, but I do think Botswana is the most memorable for me. And the reason being, you are so intimate with the wildlife. Both in the lodges we choose, which are small, most of them only have 8 or 10 accommodations. They're nestled in nature. And then the mobile camps, where you literally have elephants and hippos and you name it that could walk through camp. There's just nothing like it. And so I know long into my retired years, I'm going to be able to close my eyes and think of Okavango and all the stories and all the memories. It's really that keen of a destination for me. So I think it's great because you live the ecological story, you see the animals, you see so much animal behavior, and you're rarely ever in a situation with multiple vehicles or crowds. It's not as heavily visited as some of the other areas in the Maremi Game Park. So I would like to turn this over to the two Gregs. We have Greg Smith and Greg Butcher, and I feel incredibly lucky to call them both friends and colleagues. They've both been involved in education and conservation and interpretation of the natural world to the degree that it's so comfortable for them. They just welcome you to share their learning and their expertise. And so without further ado, I'll turn this over to Greg Smith, but I'm happy to pop back in for questions or comments toward the end.
Thanks, Peg. Greg Smith here. I want to give you just a short overview of what we're going to do in this presentation. And I want to share with you what the day-to-day experience is going to be for you and what you can look forward to while you're on this tour. And then some of the wildlife and some of the birds we're going to see. My background started working with Naturalist Journeys since 2007. I've done about 125 tours, and I've been to a lot of places I never thought I would have gone to early in my life. this is one of my favorites. So before I get started, I would like Greg Butcher to introduce himself. He's going to be your guide on this trip. I was in Botswana doing this tour last year, and this year Greg's going to take it on. So Greg, if you want to do an intro on yourself, and then I'll get started with the presentation.
Hey, everybody. I'm Greg Butcher. I live in Northern Virginia. My career was in bird conservation and citizen science, and actually combining the two, using citizen science to help us determine what the priorities are for bird conservation. I led my first tour to Texas in 1990, and I didn't start guiding full time until 3.5 years ago. And so I'm probably up to about 20 tours yet. I've done the count. I should do the count to make sure. I've been to South Africa. I have not been on this tour before, but Greg and Peg and the local guides are providing me so much support. I think that it's going to be an absolutely wonderful tour for all of us, and I hope you can sign up and join us.
Thanks, Greg. Well, let's go down a page. Well, let's look at this page. These are sightings we see every day on this tour. I mean, giraffes are regular, yellow-billed storks, spotted hyenas, ostrich, and one of the big five for Africa, the leopard, is we will see those on these trips. It's just amazing that we get to see the big five, hopefully, on this tour. So let me go to the next page. Hang on. Okay, so here's the map. If you look at the map on the right side, you'll see Mon in the north central part of Botswana, and that's where your flights in will be, and that's where your first night or two in Maun will be at the Cresta Riley Hotel. And if you look to the northwest, the upper left, you will see the Moremi Game Reserve, and you spend 2 nights there, 3 days, 2 nights there, and then you go over to the Kwai River, and then you fly to the Moremi Reserve Lodge. So you can fly to Maun directly from Ethiopia, South Africa, and there are a couple of flights from Europe when you're investigating how to get there. So I would suggest looking at those and finding what's the easiest flight for you in the sense of shorter layovers. If you do need to spend longer layovers, make it as short as you can, because you're going to get an extra day. You're going to land one day, have your night, and then we're going to hit the ground running the next day. The map on the left shows you the 3 locations of the main tour. Those are the red highlighted areas, and then Nai Pan, which is the extension that we offer on this trip. And we're going to go through all of those locations and what a typical day is like, and explain and figure out what you're going to see in those areas. And hopefully you'll have lots of questions for us that you post in the chat at the end during this presentation, and we'll answer them at the end. So let's look at these wild dogs. I've done this tour, I think 8 times, and I've seen wild dogs 6 of the 8 times I've been there. So they are a challenge to find, but when you find them, they're very docile. So let's take a look at these. So this was a pack of 18 dogs we found, and they were all bedded down. We watched them for about 10 minutes, and then they decided it was time to get up and hunt. And watching wild dogs greet each other, it's a lot of yipping and licking and kits, and they're just all over the place. So I'm hopeful you will see these on the trip. Like I said, 6 out of the 8 times. They're getting rarer, but the Okavango is a great place to find these animals. And Ewan, who is going to be our primary guide, who owns Masan Safaris along with his wife Sally, they use a lot of communication with locals. So they know where things are hanging out. And you're going to learn later on in the tour just how to start looking for these animals and looking for animals reacting a certain way or birds calling a certain way. So I'm hopeful you will see the African wild dog on your tour. So let's just go over the itinerary briefly. Your arrival in Botswana, like I said, you can fly from Europe there directly, South Africa, and Ethiopia all have direct flights to Man. The second day, you'll be at the Cresta Riley Hotel, which is on the Thalakamani River, which runs right behind the hotel. Now, you're going to see this big metal fence at the Cresta Riley Hotel, and that's not to keep you in. That's to keep the wildlife out. You probably don't want to get down into the river yourself, but there are plenty of places to view from the lodge, from the hotel, from the bridge next to the hotel and the lake, and see wildlife. You'll see hippos down there if there's water, and lots of other wildlife. Like Peg said, this year is probably one of the wettest they've had in a long time. Well, that includes last year was very wet. When we were there last year, we actually saw the river form in front of us. It was a dry riverbed when we arrived. The next day, there was water flowing in it. So those Angola highlands with all that water is just pushing south. And we'll spend the next day doing the birding hotspots. And that's right along that river. We'll get away from the river for a little bit to look for wildlife, but we'll spend most of it following that river and looking where the terminus of the water is. And you can actually find different birds and different animals in those areas where the water is pushing forward, because what it's doing is pushing animals out of burrows and the like. And it's sort of a field day for predators. Day 3, you'll hop in the safari vehicles with Ewan, and off you go to the Moremi Game Reserve. It's probably a 3.5-hour drive to get up there, but you're stopping for wildlife along the way. And once you pass through the cattle gate, they have a cattle gate that prevents cattle from spreading hoof and mouth disease there. And once you pass through that gate, you'll know you're in the park, or not the park, but the reserve. So we'll spend the rest of that day in the Delta, looking around, spotting wildlife. And one of the things about going on these safaris is you don't know what's around the next corner. You just go around a corner and there's something spectacular waiting for you. So Ewan is very good at sharing his information, but he's also very good at educating you on how to look for wildlife. Because with 7 people and Greg, that's 8 people looking for wildlife. So nothing should get by us. It does, but it usually doesn't. So we'll spend 2 days there, 2 nights there. Then we go to the second mobile safari camp at the Kwai River, which is, we're on the opposite side of the river, on the south side of the river from the village Kwai. So there's a village and there are other game lodges on the north side of the river. One of the things that makes this mobile camping so special is on the south side of the river, Ewan and Sally and Peg have to get reservations a year in advance to get a campsite there. They're very hard to come by. Botswana controls their safaris pretty strictly. So when Peg said you don't see a lot of vehicles, you may see some on the other side of the river, safari vehicles from the lodges, but you're not going to see a lot on our side of the river. So it's a pretty special educational opportunity. So we spend those 2 full days in the Kwai River area, and then we fly to Moremi Crossing Lodge. Last year was the first year I'd been to the Moremi Crossing Lodge, and their naturalists are just spectacular. One of the special things about including a lodge like this is they have a certain set, number of hectares that they patrol every day. They're out there looking at wildlife every day. So they know where the hyena dens are. They know where birds are nesting. They know where the leopard, is eating an impala or things like that. So it's a different experience in that they take us directly to things that they know are going on. And we'll see things that we didn't see in the previous 4 or 5 days and getting those opportunities for photographs. We spend 2 days at the Maremi crossing, and we'll have a photo later on of it during the at the beginning of the dry season where there's very little water around there. But with all the water that Peg talked about, and when I was there last year, the water is 20 feet in front of your tent cabins. And there's warthogs, there's crocodiles, there's elephants, there's the opposite side of the river for Maremi Crossing is a good place to look for wild dogs. So you step out into your front porch, your deck, and you scan the other side of the river, and you're going to see a lot more wildlife there. So this is a really special place. We'll leave there and fly back to Mon, and depending on if you take the extension, you'll either fly home from Mon or you'll fly back out on some of these smaller planes that we use to get around in that part of Africa and fly out to Naipan for the extension. Now, Naipan is in the Kalahari Desert, and you get a different complement of wildlife and birds out there. You get similar species for some of them, but there's species out there that you're going to see in the desert because it's so much more xeric in the area and the like. The thing about the delta is it concentrates the wildlife with all that water. So that's why we head to the delta. But the Kalahari is a different experience. So this is Kalahari from the air, and you can see how those channels, it just goes wherever it wants. So sometimes that helps us, and sometimes it limits us as to where we can go. But Ewan has been doing these tours for 30 some odd years, and he really knows his way around, and he knows how to get places. If somebody says there's a certain species of wildlife we want to see. So as it says, a peak flood season during the dry season. From Angola, all this water has to work its way south to Botswana, and then it just dries up in the desert. So there's a lot of water there this year, and that will actually make it, I think, an even better safari for you. The wildlife concentrations, ideal conditions for water-based safaris. I'll talk a little bit more about that when we get to the Maremi crossing, because there are water-based safaris that we will be going on there. And Greg will have the opportunity to schedule one of those water-based safaris, but we'll talk about that when we get to that section. The weather is cooler. The nights are pretty cool. The days are really comfortable. You're going to wear layers and you're going to shift and take them in, take them on. I've really never had a very windy tour here. You might get some breezes, but not any winds where you're just bundled up. So, and exceptional bird life viewing. We'll get into a little bit more on that. Secretary birds. Now, when we get to the outlying areas, the grassy fields outside of the Mopani forests, we're going to have the chance to see secretary birds. But going on the Kalahari extension is where these birds thrive. These are snake eaters, lizard eaters, and they're very friendly. Not friendly, but they're habituated to not reacting to the vehicles. I guess I should say none of the wildlife reacts to the vehicles. And I'll share a video with you a little bit later and show you just how easy or how they think about being around a safari vehicle. So lots of elephants in Botswana, lots of them. And we'll see lots in the water, younger elephants playing, jumping on each other, and elephants, in the water, they can do that. But it's one of the things about being near the water is it's where the old elephants, the old bulls go to spend their last few months of life. You'll see a lot of bulls feeding on the edge of this water. And what they're doing is looking for soft greens because they've actually worn their molars down and they need soft food, but they'll eventually pass away from old age. And seeing elephants in the water like this, I think is special. We'll see plenty of it. I can't remember the populations, but it's tens of thousands in Botswana right now. Hippos, you do get to see them out of the water, but that's why Ewan will get you out at first light. You won't be able to recognize wildlife when we start our morning drives. It's that dark. You can see a light color in the morning sky, but this is when we get out and we see the hippos returning to the water, to their pools. They've been out foraging all night. Depending on which camps Ewan was able to reserve, last year we were on the edge of a lake and it was hippo central. You'll hear them all night long. You'll hear them scuffling and fighting and snorting and doing all sorts of things. So it's really a treat to see the animals out of the water. At Maremi Crossing, you'll have the opportunity to go out in these makoros, and these are hand-carved wooden boats, and they're poled along. And if you have a really good naturalist, he will sing to you while you're out in the water. So you're being poled along like this and enjoying the wildlife, enjoying the sunset, and they'll be singing to you. So this is pretty special, getting out in the water like this, because you're just floating along silently. So in the Maremi Crossing area, there are 3 male lions, and they're from the same litter and the same pride. Now, I first met these 3 lions, I can't remember how long ago, probably 10 years ago, and they were still together. All 3 males have survived this long, and they control this section of the Okavango. And what was going on here, I want to share this story about Ewan. Ewan goes, oh, that's one of the brothers over there on the other side of the river. And he goes, there's another male lion from a different pride in their territory. He's focused. He's walking with his head up high. And Ewan goes, we're going to go park on this hill over here because I know he's going to cross the river right here. Oops, excuse me. So we park on this hill, and this is what we get, walking right towards us, swimming towards us. So we'll see this male again later on in this presentation, because he's not afraid of vehicles, and he really doesn't care about vehicles. So this is the Crest O'Reilly. This is the dining room in the left photo that you see behind the pool, and another shot of the dining room. So on the left photo, if you're in one of those chaise lounges, you'd be looking out at the river. It's probably about 50 feet away from you. And you'll see a lot of locals walking down that river. I would not suggest that any of you do that. These people have been living here for a while, and there's a lot of wildlife. The river corridor is a way for animals to move from one point to the next. So this will be your hotel the first 2 nights. And Ewan will pick you up on the second morning, and that's when you'll start your safari. So some of the birding highlights we get when we're driving to the Okavango and in the Okavango are, you have the African openbill, which is the bird on the lower right, and they're a clam specialist. So they'll be foraging in pools of water that are not ephemeral pools. They're long-term pools, and clams actually develop there. The European hoopoe up in the top right is a great bird, magpie shrike, top middle, little bee eater in the middle of the photo there, and hammerkop, an African fish eagle in the upper left. One thing I'll say about the hammerkop, tell your guides you want to see a hammerkop nest. They're huge. And then look on top of that nest, because that's where Varro's, eagle owls, and other eagles and other raptors nest, on top of these birds' nests. So In the Delta, you get to see the southern ground hornbill, that bird with the red gular pouch. And one thing, when you're there, if you have a camera, take a picture of their eyes. These birds have the biggest eyelashes of any bird I've seen in the world. And they're snake eaters. They eat lizards, sort of like the secretary bird. They'll eat grains, things like that. And you'll usually see a small group, 4, 5, 6 individuals. One of the other big five, the lion. Last year we had this pride that had 3 different age group of cubs, and this is just 2 or 3 of them sitting on this termite mound. There were actually 6 when we started there. So we're at eye level with these lions, and these are the kind of experiences you're going to get for photography and just observing wildlife. Hippos with jacanas, African jacanas walking on them. So I think I said earlier, at least 30 species of mammals and probably 175 to 185 species of birds. Remember, there are thousands of elephants, and you see this going on all the time. So you can see the Mopani forest in the background there, and you saw with that aerial shot we saw earlier, these channels run through forests and have created permanent channels or permanent grasslands that the forest hasn't been able to invade, because with these seasonal floods, when we get the amount of rain that Peg was talking about, it pushes those trees back. Again, there's that group of lions again, 3 of the 6 that were just checking us out. Yawning hippos. I mean, look at the teeth on that thing, and it's a vegetarian. This thing eats grass. But being the dominant male is really important, because you get to breed with the females and you have your own pool and you can keep the other males out. So seeing these animals in the pool and doing a big yawn like that, we will see that on the trip. So the bird on the left is probably like our killdeer here in North America. You know, you get too close to a killdeer and it gets agitated and it makes a lot of noise. Well, when there's predators around, the guinea fowl, helmeted guinea fowl, are the ones that are going to alert you that there's wildlife around. And you'll see Ewan stop, and he sees these birds going off. He'll stop because he wants to see what they're getting excited about. And it's a very attractive bird, but it's also the one that gives us some insight into what's going on around us. We'll be at the beginning of migration, just at the very beginning of migration. So the birds are coming from Europe and Northern Africa and heading south to Botswana to nest. We should see carmine bee eaters, maybe not this many because it's just the beginning of the migration season. But this is nesting habitat for them. What they do is find these sandy beaches, floodplains, and they excavate burrows. And Nile monitors investigate every one of those burrows. So they'll go down and see if there's eggs. They'll go down and see if there's young birds. But we're a little early in the season for this kind of nesting. But we should see this bird, one of the 3 or 4 different bee eaters we'll see on the trip. Cheetahs. Now, cheetahs, I would look for cheetahs more in the Kalahari on the extension, but we have seen them. We do see them in Moremi. I mentioned earlier about getting away from the trees, and you get these grasslands, and you'll find a lot of the grazing animals. Because water is scarce, except in the Okavango, a lot of the wildlife travel for a number of miles to where they forage, and it's out in these grasslands and the like. And this is where the cheetah finds its favorite prey, some of the antelope species and like. This is a young male. He's full grown, still with mom, and he probably got booted within the next 2 months after this. So there were a pair of male brothers and the female laying out there, and you can see how close we are. You know, iPhones take great pictures nowadays, and it's amazing the shots you can get with an iPhone. So this was with an iPhone. Some of the birding highlights when we're in the Delta is upper left, the southern red-billed hornbill. Upper right, the lilac-breasted roller. Great looking bird. Look at how colorful that thing is. And they'll be in full force there. They're one of the early migrants, and we'll see lots of those there. Lower right is the African sacred ibis, and then we got some finches on the left, and we have purple grenadier. In the middle, we have blue-capped cordon bleu, and on the right, younger purple grenadier. The lower left is crested barbet, and you should see these in the trees around Crest O'Reilly when you're there. You'll see them out in the Delta there, but you'll see them at Crest O'Reilly also. And the mammal highlights. We've looked at cheetah, spotted hyenas. This is why we get out early in the morning. That's when we see the spotted hyenas. They're making the rounds looking for somebody else's kill. Young elephants, just hitting out with new tusks. Greater kudu and black-backed jackal are some of the mammals we will see in that area. So this is one of your safari vehicles, an extended Toyota Land Rover. And one of the great things about this is that everybody gets a window seat. Nobody's sitting in the middle. You don't have to jockey for position and the like. So the animals, if you're in that big square box, the animals don't just think you're in a big square box and pay no attention to you. So it's open-sided. There's shouldn't be any rain at this time of year. And you can do a 360 in this. So they're a lot of fun to drive around in. They're going to give you rules. You can't stick your arms out. You can't stick your camera equipment out because that breaks that square box outline. And if you've ever seen a lion's eyes focus on somebody dropping a lens cap in there, or maybe their hat falling off or something, yeah. So you'll want to pay attention to the rules. Dinners are cooked by the guys. That's what we call them, the guys, the camp guys. And they cook over an open fire. They make flans. They make all these great dishes. They set a nice table. There are adult beverages on the tour and non-adult beverages. And the two pictures on the right, I want to go into this a little bit more in depth. This is what your mobile safari camp will look like. So if you're traveling as a couple, you will be in a larger tent like this. You'll have a front porch with 2 chairs. You'll either have 2 cots. I think you get 2 cots no matter what in there. In the lower picture, if you're traveling as a single, this is the kind of tent you're going to send. Now you can stand up in all of these tents. All of them have an en-suite toilet. So if you see the tent in the lower left of that bottom picture, you can see a canvas courtyard in the back of the tent. So you just unzip the back of your tent and you have a toilet and a wash basin. In the morning, you will hear Ewan walk by your tent going, morning, morning, time to get up. And right after that, you'll hear the zipper in the back of your tent, and somebody's putting hot water in your wash basin for you. So you get up and have an early morning breakfast. And like I said earlier, we're out very, very early, first light. One of the things is we have to be back in camp before it's dark. We can't drive at night outside the camp, but as soon as there's a speck of light in the eastern sky, we're out again. So we'll go out till about 11 o'clock. We'll come back, have breakfast. Lunch. We'll have a breakfast before we leave, a light breakfast, and then we'll head back, have lunch, have a siesta, and then go have afternoon tea where we'll do our checklist for the morning drive, and then we'll go out for an evening drive. They do have showers here, and it consists of another canvas wrap with teak flooring, and it has a three-gallon bucket, and it's got a little lever with a shower head on it. And you get wet, you lather up, you rinse off, and if you run out of water, you call the guys, and they will get you a fresh bucket of water while you stand in the shower. So I wouldn't suggest taking a leisurely shower, but people have. So that's a typical day in camp there. And those are the kind of tents you're going to be staying in. Those smaller tents are in a semicircle. And so the ones in the middle are the furthest out, and then the corners curve back. Remember that lion we saw swimming across the water? Well, we followed him for a while because he was looking for this rival male. But I want to show you what they think of hang on, where is it? There it is. What they think of vehicles, okay? So we get these kind of experiences with most wildlife. They just walk around the vehicle. Hyenas sometimes are interested in the vehicle, and they'll come up and sniff your vehicle. They just want to see what it is. But to them, it's just a big square box. So you get these very intimate sightings of wildlife. Sunsets are pretty spectacular. Sunrises, I don't remember too many sunsets, but sunsets are pretty spectacular. And we're out till that sun is below the horizon. And it's a pretty special time to be out there because you'll see elephants, you'll see giraffes and the like. And these are the planes we fly in. This is what gets us to Maremi Crossing Lodge and back to Mon. And I just want to share a little plane ride. You do get to see things below you because it's an overwing aircraft. And Greg can talk to the pilot, or they will probably ask Greg the question, do you want to fly low or do you want to fly high? And you can fly between your destinations at 1,500 feet, or you can fly at 4,000. So here we go. That's just an overview of what the delta looks like. Fingers of water coming through the trees and grasslands. Kwai River. Remember I said that the Kwai village is on the other side of the river, and we're going to be in slightly different habitat here. You're going to be in flooded wetlands adjacent to the river. And so we get more water birds like lower left, the African jacana, wattle cranes in the lower right. Again, there's our southern ground hornbill, and there's a Cory bustard and a knob-billed duck. So the Kwai River area presents more water-based wildlife than the Maremi area. Another shot of a big five animal, the leopard. We see most of them in the trees, but we will see them hunting on the ground early morning. Another reason to get out there early in the morning. Zebras, the plain zebra is pretty common. Giraffes we'll see, like this female giraffe, and wild dogs, like I said, 6 out of 8 times I think is doing pretty darn good seeing that wildlife. So Maremi Crossing has the lodge right on a bend in the river, and it's on Chiefs Island. And you can see in the lower left, you can see the tent cabins in the back, and you can see how close the elephants are to you. You'll have them walk right through camp. You can't leave your tent cabin at night at all. But during the day, you have to take a peek around the corner to make sure it's safe for you to get to the dining hall. It's pretty nice interior in there with king beds. You have an outdoor shower in the back that's got a screen around it. And there's some more opportunities for makoros and rides on those as you have that whole channel at your disposal. The guides at these lodges are just phenomenal. They're witty, they're knowledgeable, and they love interacting with you. So we'll be in two separate vehicles when we're at that lodge, and you can switch off both days and take rides with each other. Some of the birds we'll see along that riverbank, that malachite kingfisher in the upper right, the pearl-spotted owlet out in the forest, a female saddle-billed stork, Bennett's woodpecker, and a white-quilled bustard in the lower right. So more hippos, more lions, more elephants, the Nile crocodile in the lower right. We call him the landlord because he's always collecting rent on somebody. Again, another leopard walking directly towards the vehicle. You don't exist in that vehicle to them. So this is the lodge at the beginning of the dry season, an aerial photo. When you saw the makoros a couple of slides ago with the green, they actually have motorized skiffs, and this whole area is flooded. And you'll take a boat ride, and like I said, Greg will talk to them about whether you want to do a morning or an afternoon. If you do an afternoon boat ride, you get way out there and you have a sundowner cocktail. And if you do a morning ride, you get out there. You're going to see lots of wildlife at both times. If there's dogs around, they're probably going to take you out in the morning, but that's something Greg will schedule that when you're at the lodge, and he will do that first thing when he arrives, because there are other guests and they're going to want to take rides too. So, pearl spotted owlet. These guys are pretty cool. They're diurnal, but a lot of times they'll roost in the trees midday. You can see this rhino in the background here, white rhino. We do get them once in a while. I would say I've seen white rhinos on 2 of my trips. So that's one of the big 5 that we have an opportunity for. Now on to Naipan. I would suggest that getting to Naipan is important because you get into the Kalahari, and all of us have heard of the Kalahari. You have the least bit of interest in Africa. Very dry there. They have a man-made water hole in front of the lodge, and they have some natural water holes further out into the salt pan. So these are all, this whole area is are salt pans, and they're areas that don't support a lot of vegetation because of the thickness of the clay. The clay just doesn't allow opportunities for really billowy grasses and foraging crops out there. So water is more scarce here, and so having that water hole right in front of your tent. One thing I want to mention, during the whole tour, the night skies are amazing, but when you go to Naipan, this upper right picture I took last year of the Milky Way. And this is just, you can't be outside your lodging there. but you can poke your camera out your shower door because you have an outdoor shower there. But this is some of the wildlife you see. Honey badger in the lower right, bat-eared fox, middle right. And bat-eared fox, it'll be a cool morning and they'll sit out in the sun before they return to their den. They're called bat-eared foxes. You can see how big their ears are, but they forage for insects that are underground. And they'll just listen for something moving underground and they'll just dig it up and eat it. The giraffe in the lower left. I challenge you, if you go on this trip, when you see a giraffe drinking, do you see that S? They make that S with the water every time they lift their head. All those vertebrae in the neck just cause them to create that. So I challenge you to get that photo. Lots of baby elephants in that water hole. So the last of the big five we haven't seen or talked about is the African buffalo in the lower right. And you'll be in huge herds of those. You'll go one day when you're in Okavango or Naipan and you won't see them. And then the next day there's 1,000 animals where you were the day before and you just go, where did they come from? So see lots of those. Another leopard doing a little stretch. This leopard was stretching. It had been sitting in a trail looking at a red lechwe that was about 30, 40 meters away from it, just waiting for it to get closer. Well, it never did. It finally got tired and just stretched. Serval cat, we have chances of seeing those. And I'm going to wrap it up here. There's only 5 spaces left. This is a pretty intimate tour with Greg because there's, I think, 7 people allowed on this. And that's one vehicle, while you're with Ewan, but that's 2 vehicles while you're in the Maremi crossing. So I'm going to turn it over to Julie, and we'll go to the chats and see if we can answer some questions for you. Thanks very much.
Sure. Thank you, Greg. That was great. Regina, hi, Regina. Regina wants to know, is there danger from the hippos when you're in a boat?
Yes, there are. And when we're in the boat, the driver there's a driver at the back who's manning the engine, the motor, and there's a guide and animal tracker up front. And he's pointing out every hippo he sees in the river, and we give them a wide berth. We go way around them. We don't even get close to them because they can move underwater. So, yes, there's a minor danger, but there's a lot of care taken to make sure we don't get in a position where something can happen to us, Regina. You're muted, Julie.
Sorry, I thought I had it. Regina also asks about the photo you had with the hippo with their mouth open. Is the yawning a threat display?
I think Peg took that photo. Did you, Peg? Sometimes it's just a yawn. I don't know that it's a threat display unless there's 2 of them doing it, 2 males. The females aren't fighting for turf or anything like the males, and it's young males getting in trouble with older males, the gray hair.
Greg, I did take that photo and I remember we had crossed a channel. We had a couple elephants behind us and that hippo was grazing placidly. And then he just came up and gave us a clear, road is closed. And we went, oh, great. We've got 2 elephants behind us and 1 hippo in front of us. But our drivers were just smooth as silk and threaded in the no threat zone for all of them. But I do remember, because I'd always read about how they had those teeth in the middle, the canines, and seeing them that clearly and that close was really memorable.
Okay. Mark has a few questions. The first one, what shots are needed in preparation for a trip to Africa?
I don't think you need yellow fever, but I've had yellow fever for other spots that I travel to. Um, you might want to talk to your doctor about a prophylactic for malaria, but it is the dry season, but we are near water. Um, I don't remember seeing mosquitoes in the Okavango or at Moremi Crossing Lodge, but I would talk to your doctor about that. Um, Peg, do you know of any other shots? I don't think there's any that are required to get into the country.
Yeah, there's always that gray area between required and recommended. So every tour, we have a know before you go section on the website, and it'll go through. You can also just quick query online for the area you're going to go to and what is recommended. So hepatitis A, B, those are kind of standard anywhere you go in the world. Typhoid, it's best if you can do it to get the oral, but you can get a shot. But that's a 10-year shot. So many people that travel globally have that. So I don't think there's anything out of the ordinary, but definitely would review that material.
Mark's next question is, are there restrictions on luggage because there are small planes used?
There are restrictions, and that is in the no to go section that you will get. Hard-sided luggage doesn't work. You need soft-sided. They've gotten much better about allowing, I think it was, was it 22 kilograms, about 40 pounds max that you could take with you is what it is now. It used to be much less, but that will be in the no to go section. Hard-sided luggage just doesn't do well in those bellies. They can get it in there, and large suitcases. You want to have smaller suitcases and soft-sided. But I travel with a camera, travel with a computer, a couple of cameras, different lenses, and I've never had a problem, Mark, in getting that aboard those smaller plane flights.
Mark also wants to know, is there an ideal camera lens length to bring?
Yes. Um, I would say a zoom lens that's 1 to 400 or 1 to 500 millimeter. I would also take a landscape lens. I like taking photographs of wildlife in their environment, and those landscape lenses do that. So I take two bodies, one with that and one with a 100 to 400 or 500. Right now I have a 1 to 500. So you can get pretty close with that, or you can zoom in on an animal's eye, or you can zoom in on, you can get relatively close, Mark, to all of the wildlife. Unless there's water between you and that animal, you can get pretty darn close to everything. So I think the flexibility of having a 100 to 500 would be, or a 100 to 400 would be an ideal lens to take with you.
And Mark's last question is, what percentage of time is spent on animals compared to birds?
Well, we're always looking at birds because you're driving and you see a bird. So when you find the wildlife, you're concentrating on wildlife. But when you're driving between wildlife sightings, we are stopping and looking at birds. Percentage-wise, that would be really challenging to come up with that. But we spend plenty of time with both. It's when we see the wildlife, you get enamored with the behavioral things going on, and you're looking at it. But you also do that with the birds. You'll see some pretty spectacular sightings of birds. But I would say wildlife probably comes out on top because it's just so abundant and it's so readily. It's just you can get so close to it.
Greg, I'd like to also comment in that because one of my last trips, I had such a great comment at the wrap up. The gentleman said, heck with the big five. We just saw the big 500. And you start to feel sorry for the people that are going from cat to cat and they don't notice the other things. And we like to watch leopard tortoise and Nile monitor and dung beetles, and the birds are constant. The bird density is still relatively high. So that's a real pleasure. If you stop to watch a leopard in the same tree, there's going to be a barbet, maybe, something else exciting will come through. We've had desert cisticula. I've had a kittlets plover actually walk up and almost touch the paw of a sleeping lion. So I would say I agree with Greg in that it's all melded together. But in the morning, particularly, we're pretty focused on predators, and we just don't stop for things we know we'll see again because they kind of are active that early time. And then midday, and then the camp is great for birds. And the guys in the kitchen, sometimes there's little scraps around, and you'll find a hornbill down on the ground, and they know we love birds. So sometimes they find the roosting owlets for us. And birding is a real bonus. And I just can't imagine being in that landscape and not paying attention to the birds. But I don't feel we miss any mammals.
Becky and Dave would like to know what the afternoon temperatures are like.
Afternoon temperatures, I'd probably say 60s to 70s.
And Regina would like to know nighttime temperatures.
I would say it gets down into the high 30s, low 40s. I've never been uncomfortable at night in my tent. They are the most comfortable cots. And you've got plenty to keep you warm now.
So that flows nicely into a next question. Please fully describe the sleeping cots in the mobile camps.
Well, it's got a cross leg, and I would say I weigh a little over 200 pounds, and I can fit comfortably in the cot. There's a very thick mattress pad with sheets, and then there's numerous blankets. You actually have additional blankets and multiple pillows if you want them for the evening. I have never gotten cold at night.
Mark would like to know if an animal has ever attacked a guest.
No. Well, there was this fly once. Anyways, no, there's never been anything that's come close to that.
So that segues nicely into the next question. Becky and Dave are curious if the biting insects are problematic anywhere on the itinerary.
No. You hear about tsetse flies and things, and you're out of the range for some of those, but you're certainly out of the season for most of the biting insects. That's why we have most of the birds just starting to return. So there's not a lot of insects there. I can't remember ever getting a bite in Botswana from an insect. I've had a few mosquitoes, but no.
Is there internet access during the trip so that people can FaceTime family or upload to social media if they're active on social media, things like that?
Well, on the mobile safari part, there is no Wi-Fi or internet access. Ewan does travel with a satellite phone. He has contact if anything goes south for any reason, somebody gets ill or whatever. So we have that. But at Moremi Crossing Lodge and Naipan, yes, there is Wi-Fi. And those will be in the lounge areas, not in your tent or in your room, I mean. And at Crest O'Reilly, you have cell service, plus you'll need an international plan, but they also have Wi-Fi there. So during the mobile camping safari, you're not going to have any access like that.
The next question is, how long is the siesta time? I like that question.
Well, after you have lunch, you got till 3 o'clock. That's when afternoon tea is. And we have tea and crackers or cake or something. And then We head out 3:30, quarter to 4. So we get back at 11 to 12. It's not rigid. Um, if something's going on, we're going to go out earlier for our evening drive, or we're going to come back later for lunch, and it'll be there for us. But I would say you can get a good 2-hour nap in there.
The next question is, how many birds might this trip see that are not seen in the US?
I would say anywhere from 165 to 180. There's a few things like maybe peregrine falcon that you could see in the US, but most everything you see will be from that continent.
And then, are we likely to see any kills?
Yes. And that's where the 7 of you on the trip, if you see a kettle of vultures circling somewhere, or you're seeing birds going a little crazy, yes, it's life and death out there. Predators have to eat. They've just got to eat, and they're going to take something to do that. And there's also age. Elephants will die of old age. Animals will die of old age. They'll make it through their entire life without being predated on. But when they die, yes, you'll see animals feeding on carcasses.
The next question is, how much more is the extension, time and cost? I can answer that. The extension to Naipan is 4 days, and the cost is 3,330 for double occupancy or single occupancy. The next question is, what would be an ideal flight plan from the Western US to Botswana?
Ideal? I wish I could say there was an ideal. What I usually do is I fly to Munich or Frankfurt from the Western US, San Francisco. You can fly Lufthansa or Ethiopian Airlines from Washington over to Ethiopia. So if I do Lufthansa, I will get a day room at there's a couple of hotels in the Frankfurt airport, the Sheraton, and I can't remember the other one, and get a day room there, and then you take off that night and you fly directly down to it might be Cape Town, it might be Mon. I'm not sure what their schedules are right now. So that's the best, because with the day room you get a little sleep, unless you're flying business class. Having that day in a hotel, that 10 hours in a hotel really helps.
Is there much dust? And if so, could this cause camera issues?
There is some dust. One of the things I share with my clients when we go on these trips, because it's mostly sand and grass that we're driving on. I would suggest you just take a towel for your camera, and when the camera's on your lap, you place the towel over the camera and protect it. But I wear glasses, and it's not like I have to clean them regularly. That it's just not that dusty, but there is dust, and I would suggest taking a towel or something to throw over your camera while you're driving along. You're not going at high speed, so it's pretty minimal.
Okay, and the last question is from Kate. Hi, Kate. She wants to know, are there many birds not seen during the South Africa trip that you will see here?
Yeah, there are. What do you think, Peg?
I think there's actually quite a lot, Greg. The Mopani woodland is in that section of Africa and it doesn't extend. You get it in Zambia and you get it there. So you have specialties in the small passerine and songbirds. And then species like lesser jacana are difficult to see anywhere, and they're pretty common in Okavango. Slaty egrets. There's a number of bird species in that central African belt you don't get in Kenya and Tanzania, and you don't get in South Africa. And then the ones that you do repeat are all those spectacular ones that you're just so happy to see them again. Seeing another secretary bird or another southern ground hornbill is pretty perfect. So I found the birding, I did a lot of trips just like Greg did, and I really got to know the BirdLife International has a partner there. There's a really good local birding club in Mon. And just along the river, I can remember days where we started out the trip with 79 or 80 species just in Mon along the river. So I found the birding really very exciting. It's not like Tanzania where you get over 400 species, but it's definitely about 200 in a segment of really interesting birds.
And the last question is from Catherine. Oh, two more questions. Catherine wears daily contact lenses, and she is curious if that would pose a problem.
I don't wear contacts, but my wife did, and no, not a problem. If you bring enough solution with you, it's not like you're getting dust. It really there is dust, but it's not especially a problem. It wasn't for my wife.
And the last question is, what is the typical food served at the lodges, and is there a lot of beef?
There's a lot of vegetable dishes, stews and the like. They do serve beef. They will serve some lamb and fish. So, because of the fresh water they have around them, you're going to have wild caught tilapia and other fish like that. Breakfast, there's usually eggs cooked to order, lots of fruit salads, different grain breads and the like. That's what I remember.
Well, thank you. Do Greg or Peg or Greg have any closing comments before we wrap this up?
Well, I would just say, like Peg, it's one of my favorite trips. It really is. And you never know what's around the next corner. You go around a group of trees and you've got this wildlife right there in front of you. And it's a pretty special situation to be in something like that, especially with such a knowledgeable and competent guide, Ewan, or the naturalists in the Maremi Crossing Lodge.
And I have some closing comments. I really thought about this because we're in such a chaotic time where a lot of us are glued to our phones and reading the news, and we're on the edge of our seat, and some of our flight routes are precluded because we like flying through Dubai and Doha. So it's a world situation we're watching all the time. And what I loved about this trip is how readily you just read the Bush newspaper. You leave all that behind in the mobile part because you don't have the Wi-Fi, and you get these stories. And one I remember so well is right by our camp. This beautiful female lioness had a single little cub. And that cub wasn't the size of a basketball. It was a tiny cub. And of course, we were enchanted with her. And then up on the hill, we see a big male. And we just think, oh my God, he's going to come, and males kill cubs. So the female will come back in estrus and breed with him. And he already had quite a few females. So we had lots of discussions, and this was our story. This was like in the morning, rather than read the newspaper, we're like, is she out there? Is the cub alive? And so our stories got to nature. And what we loved is on day 3, 4 big, beautiful lionesses came in, greeted her, rubbed her thing, and they just took on that male. They just moved him out of there, kept him busy. And so we like to think the rest of the story was the cub lived, but we don't know. And we have watched wild dogs. We found one, and we got so close to it. It's still the screensaver on my laptop. but it was separated from its pack. And so for the next days, we were just on the edge of our chair. Did she find her pack? Did she get back? And so letting nature take you over for some days in life right now is really renewing. And I saw a quick question, do the guides do eBird? Yes, we love to eBird and we share the list. So we can do them offline when we're away from Wi-Fi and then catch you up, but that's easy to do. But that's my main closing comment, is giving yourself some time in nature is really healthy right now. And I'm so fortunate to be able to do it.
So just real quick, I keep the eBird list and I share it every day. Um, most trips I share it at night. It sounds like on this trip I'll share it at lunchtime. It'll be a lot more convenient that way. But yeah, that way when we all go through the list, we can double check it on eBird. And by going over it on a daily basis, it really reinforces what you see. And so you don't get overwhelmed by 100 species if you do it every third day or fifth day or something like that. We do the review on a daily basis, and then people feel much less overwhelmed. I have to tell you that I was excited about this trip as soon as Peg offered it to me, but watching this presentation just makes me ever more excited. I can't imagine a more fun time than to go to the Okavango Delta in Botswana. So I hope you can join me.
Thank you. And one more quick question. I think this is a good one. If you only have one chance to go to Africa in your lifetime, and birds are just as important to you as seeing mammals and other types of wildlife, would you choose this tour or the Tanzania tour?
I can probably answer that, Julie. I do think if you only have one shot at Africa in your life, East Africa, either Tanzania or Kenya, has the most variety because its landscapes are so varied. And so the diversity is high. And we're routinely seeing 400 species of birds now on our Tanzania tour. So Tanzania is not as intimate with the wildlife as Botswana is. They're very different experiences. So I hope you get Africa fever and can come back and do both of them. But I think if I only had one, I'd probably do Tanzania.
And I agree with that, Julie. I just got back from Tanzania 2 weeks ago. Over 50 species of mammal, 400 species of birds. But it is a different experience, having been fortunate enough to go to Botswana and Tanzania. When you were doing things in Tanzania, there are going to be more vehicles and more people, but there are more birds and there's more wildlife. So if you only go once, yeah, Tanzania, but you get the bug. Once you go to Africa, you go, I want to go back. So yeah.
Well, thank you, everyone. We've recorded this presentation, so we will, once our marketing team is done with their edits, we'll send this out to you so you can rewatch, and you can share with your friends. And if you would like to book this trip, you can email our travel planners at travel@naturalistjourneys.com. I did put that email address in the chat. And we'd love to have you. So thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, Greg and Peg and Greg.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.